Next speaker is probably well known to most of you. She is Lisa Ryan, and she is our Director of Campaign Strategy and Planning. Lisa will be sharing Animal Liberation's Deceptive Dairy campaign, the whys and hows, our investigation, research and findings, as we've peeled away the layers to get to truth and transparency. And she'll walk us through the plight of Australia's wild yet exploited dromedary camels and their suffering for the Australian camel dairy industry. You'll learn from Lisa more about the sentience of these majestic beings and why we have and will continue to advocate without fear or favour for their rights, in addition to their welfare and well-being and consumers and the public's right to know. Thank you, Lisa, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Linda, and hello, everyone. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So just to give an introduction, we are very close to launching a campaign that we've been working on for about 18 months now called Deceptive Dairy, but specifically looking at the use of Australian wild dromedary camels. Similar to some of the work that Emma's been doing, we take a very holistic approach to our campaigning, and we cover obviously the animal welfare, the animal well-being, specifically the rights of the animals we're advocating for, but we also delve into the direct links to environmental harms and risks and impacts, and also the risks and impacts to people, be that immediate community, wider Australia, and any links across the world. So just to as a heads up, there are one or two slides in the presentation that may distress people. I will give you a warning when that happens. So in preparation for the launch of our Deceptive Dairy campaign, which is specifically about camels, but has similar issues to all animal dairy products, whether they're cows or goats or sheep. But there are a couple of distressing slides, but I'll give you a heads up. So what we thought we would do tonight is run you through the sort of work that's gone into preparing for this campaign, hopefully to get people engaged, because we're going to need the help from everybody to share it. What you're looking at the moment is a screenshot from a video we have compiled that will be part of our campaign launch. I think the video itself, which captures filming we've done right across Australia, will surprise and shock people in terms of what we've uncovered. So just to run through some of the issues we've been looking at in preparing for the campaign is that camels just aren't on the political radar at all. There is no specific animal welfare legislation for camels in camel dairy at all, which means there's no monitoring and there's no enforcement. The animal welfare protection that relates to camels is about 20 years old, and it certainly doesn't include camel dairy. There is also, and our next speaker will be speaking about the issues with planning. We do lots of planning matters, responding to what we consider are harmful development applications. And certainly in terms of dairies that pop up across Australia, normally in outback rural areas, some of them don't even have planning consent, and yet they're producing environmental waste. They are selling foods produced for human consumption, but nobody seems to know about them. Basically, how the system works is the camels, which are once wild, roaming in herds, are mustered, sometimes by quad bikes, often by helicopters. They are then pushed, often quite brutally, onto transport trucks, and some of them end up in camel dairies. That means they can be on the trucks going to, any state or territory, to basically be turned into a milk producing unit like a cow, like a goat, like a sheep. But what that system requires is, because unlike cows or sheep that have been domesticated somewhat, even though most of them are very frightened of human beings, camels are wild. So turning a wild animal into a milk producing unit is a whole other level of abuse and fear for the animals, and they then become basically slaves to a dairy industry, a different form of dairy, and they're controlled that way, like other mammals who are drained of their milk for human consumption. The female camels, referred to as the she camels, need to be impregnated. Sometimes that is a natural mating, often it's artificial insemination. And then the camel calves are left with the mother for a period of time, but then the mothers are hauled into the milking sheds. And in the video we will be releasing, we have captured, and I think probably for the first time, certainly in Australia, the milking of camels and how intensive it is. So one of the areas we've really researched and researched very thoroughly are the health claims made by the camel dairy industry. So it is marketed as natural, healthy, um, good for you. There's been a lot of media, normally put together by the camel dairies themselves, or journalists they engage to give them, a really prominent story about this is the latest health food. There's one media article I read not that long ago made claims that camel milk was ideal for children or adults with autism, that it was better than cow's milk, with absolutely no scientific evidence to confirm that. So it's always promoted as healthy, natural, trying to get into a very select marketing, but we haven't been able to find research, credible research that has in fact been peer reviewed to confirm that. It's just a lot of claims. The image on the screen at the moment is one of the helicopters chasing, a camel that's been separated from the herd. They're very social, sentient beings. They live in herds quite peacefully, with very little friction between them. And when they're separated and then loaded onto trucks, often in amongst camels that are not their family or camels they don't know, it is absolutely traumatic for these majestic, normally very gentle beings. So, you know, the capturing, the mustering, the confinement, the conditioning, and then the exploitation until they're no longer considered profitable, they're not producing enough milk, they've got old, they're being difficult. There's a whole lot of reasons that they are just either sent to a slaughterhouse, which is where a lot of them end up. A lot of our camels are actually being live exported to international markets for camel dairy. It's much bigger elsewhere than it is in Australia, but it's certainly growing in Australia. And again, when you are, because it is growing across Australia, and that's what our research has confirmed, the more it's growing, the more intensive it has to become to keep those profits. Camel milk is much more expensive to produce than milk from dairy cows. So they're relying on marketing and myths. They continue to operate under, a next to non-existent regulatory code. And most people, including MPs that we've approached, when you say, are you aware of the camel dairy industry as an emerging industry? They say, we don't have camel dairies in Australia. A lot of them aren't even aware. So we believe our campaign is crucial to raise that awareness, and in its early stages of evolving, that we can do something to protect the camels and hopefully get some transparency out there about the food labelling and the marketing and the claims of sustainability, because we don't believe it's sustainable. The picture on the right is the late Steve Irwin. So the much loved by most Australians, touted as a conservationist, one of the founders of Australia Zoo. You can see there a camel being quite brutally tied up, and the footage that we grabbed that screenshot from is just a horrific watch, I can tell you, in terms of the camels that are chased with froth from their mouths because they're so stressed. A young female camel calf becomes separated from her mother, and rather than trying to do the conservation thing and return that young calf to its mother, they loaded it on a truck and took it to Australia Zoo, where they've got other camels as well, sadly. So we've sort of looked at the conservation side as well. The image on the left is typical of what you see when camel dairies are advertising the products. It's all about happy camels, ethical claims, lovely scenic rural landscapes. Nothing wrong, nothing to question. What we've found with our 18-month research and investigation is that it is a very exploitative operation that, while small in Australia, is definitely growing, and we need to do something about it, as in the collective we, those who care about animals. So just to, in our documenting of camel dairies across Australia and looking at international operations as well, we spoke with camel operators, and our video will show people what these people have said. But that top quote is from a camel dairy operation. So who said to us, without any qualms, if you can get your truck out there and you can get a camel on it, you can take them. They're basically a free resource. One of the really scary things we became aware of early on is that there are no registered antibiotics for camels and no oversight of the drugs that are being given to camels. So in any intensive system, you are going to have sores that need antibiotic treatment. So the camels are being injected with antibiotics that have been developed and tested and prescribed for factory farm pigs or factory farm chickens or factory farm ducks, and cattle and goats and all of the other animals that are farmed for human consumption or for their skins or their bodily secretions. The camel dairy industry, we discovered very early on, is also the meat industry. So a lot of them do end up in slaughterhouses. Some of them are traded to camel rides businesses, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the exposure we did back in 2024, Breaking the Camel's Back, about the camel rides businesses, and those camels are also obviously coming from the wild. But some of the capturing and the mustering, they basically divvy the camels up, and some will go to a camel rides business, some will be live exported, some go straight to the slaughterhouse. They're big animals, they have a fair amount of meat on them, so there is a profit in that. and some of them are going to camel dairy, sadly, either here for domestic use or being live exported for the camel dairy industry overseas. The food labelling and what consumers are and aren't being told or shown was a big focus of our research. I guess in similar vein to Emma's work, the first speaker, looking at how does this affect the sentient beings, the other than human animals, but how does it affect our environment, which is a shared environment? We are part of the environment. And how does it affect people? So that is people who are working in these industries as part of it, whether they're capturing the camels, transporting the camels, operating a camel dairy, but also the consumers, because consumer law is a big thing and labelling is a big thing, and people have to rely on transparent and clear labelling. So what we discovered in our research is that the labelling is very ambiguous, that consumers aren't really being told any risks, any consequences of what they're consuming, that there is no transparent reporting of the off-label treatments. So that is, unregistered antibiotics and other drugs that these camels are being injected with as well. Excuse me. There was an Australia-wide survey done on camel farms a few years ago. Nobody's owning up to who paid for that survey, but it was certainly done through a New South Wales university. And what it showed, they went out and surveyed the camel dairies operating at the moment, is that camels are normally infected with parasites, worms, and they have all sorts of other issues, including mange. And this is a common problem. It's normally not a problem when these camels are in the wild. It happens when they come into these intensive environments. So the environmental cost, although it's not as big as, say, an intensive piggery or a slaughterhouse, and those environmental costs, as we all know, are massive, which is why we're running so many farmed animal campaigns. But there is an environmental cost. Now, camels are viewed by most people as a pest, but that's actually a mislabeling. When any species of animal is labelled a pest, they can be treated differently to other species. So it's a bit like, the brumbies in Kosciuszko National Park were deemed feral, deemed a pest, and so they can be shot by helicopters out of the sky. Exactly the same thing is happening with our camels. But camels, unlike cows and sheep, are actually soft-footed beings, so they are not having that same impact on the ground and on the sands in these arid environments. They also do not compete with the native species in these habitats that have become their home. So they're actually not doing any damage to anybody else. And we have a view that Mother Nature is the greatest moderator of species and the animal. It's normally only when humans intervene and try and dominate those animals that things go haywire. The other thing we discovered, apart from all of the claims about it being sustainable, it's also, like all dairy, quite water intensive, so that's an environmental impact. But we also discovered that there is a lot of wastage. So when these animals get to a certain age, they will be disposed of. They'll either be on-sold if they're still going to make a profit, or they're basically disposed of. One of the key reasons for us making this, putting together this campaign is we are first and foremost an animal rights organisation and very proud of that, and that we view every other than human being as an individual, not a commodity. So we are fighting for every single camel, whether they're being exploited for animal human tourism, whether they're being exploited for camel dairy. Camels are also exploited for their skins, and basically anything that people can make money out of. They are highly intelligent. They are very gentle. The more we observe capturing and documenting footage of Australian camels, the more we are falling in love with them. I am quite besotted by these camels. They are amazing, amazing things, and they absolutely deserve to be considered more than a production unit for human consumption and a food product that humans really do not need to eat. This that top sentence was asked by the person filming at the time. Do you have a burial ground? And the response, and this is in our video that we will be releasing, was, we do, yes, we have a little graveyard. What we discovered was not a graveyard or a pet cemetery. It was just disposed, dead, bloated camels that had either died of illness, where they hadn't been given veterinary care, or just died of old age. But this particular camel dairy certainly didn't have a graveyard. The next slide I'm going to show you is graphic. So if anybody wants to turn away, please do so. So this is a slaughterhouse, and you can see a camel being dissected by the butchers, but you can also see two camels in the box next door where they are stunned and obviously visibly taking in what is happening to members of their herd. Maybe, it doesn't matter whether they knew these other camels or not, but that is the reality of what happens to a lot of camels. And again, one of the dairy operators we asked actually referred to this process as end-of-life care for the camels. Finally, how you can help. Please stay across all our socials. We have a pledge for these camels. I think Kara's going to whack it into the chat box. Please support animal sanctuaries. There are a number of sanctuaries that do have rescue camels. That magnificent girl on the left, her name is Harley Quinn. She came from a camel dairy industry. Harley Quinn resides with the wonderful Lynn McAllister at Galahad Sanctuary in Victoria. And this camel girl is just absolutely spectacular, and she's going to feature quite a bit in our campaign soon to be released. And anybody that has any spare dollars, if you could send them our way. All of the donations we ask for our campaigns go directly into doing something for the campaign to get better outcomes for these animals. I guess the only other thing is thank you for supporting our work. We have wonderful people supporting our campaigns, and your support is really important to us. It makes us all smile. It keeps us going. It can be very difficult work, and I think we're all on the same page to create a kinder and more just world for all other than human animals, not just dogs and cats, not just pigs, not just cows, but all of them. And the camel is sort of symbolic to us because they are deemed feral or pest. And we have seen, since we've been doing work for camels, people no longer are looking at them as a camel or a pest. They're looking at these beautiful faces, and you can see she's blowing everybody a kiss there, and they've got the most magnificent eyelashes. So people are actually looking at them as a sentient, smart, gentle being, not a feral pest. Now, if we can change hearts and minds about camels deemed feral or a pest, we can do it for lots and lots and lots of other animal friends. So thank you very much for your attention, and please keep your eyes peeled. We've got, we're very proud of what we're going to be releasing. It's been hard work, but I think it's going to make a huge, huge difference. So stay tuned. There's another direct action coming with the campaign and lots of other help we're going to be asking for. Thank you very much.
Lisa, thank you as always for a spectacular presentation. And I'd just like to share with the attendees here tonight that the amount of research that Lisa does when she embarks on a new campaign is phenomenal. There is no stone unturned. It is just outstanding work, Lisa, and we're so lucky to have you on our team. Thank you.